Good afternoon. Welcome everybody who is on site and online. I'm representing the local organization committee and chairing this one before the last occasion that will be the gala dinner. And as you know, the gala dinner will be held in the Kodai Center, not online because of the uncertainty in weather conditions. And I promise you, we won't kill the meteorologist if there will be no rain. So. Okay, so welcome everybody. And there will be a prestigious awards given to some kind of merits given to those who deserve it. And I'm starting first with calling the representative of this local organization committee, Balázs Páger, who give some kind of few words and a special award. Okay.
Yes, so good afternoon. And first we start with a light topic, actually, because the local organizing committee and the ERSA office together just announced a Twitter contest for this conference. And we would like to hand over some small prizes for the most active Twitter users during this Congress. So for the best follower, I would like to call Julian Schwartz. She has been doing a lot of liking and retweeting, but he also been doing a lot of tweeting herself during the keynotes and the special sessions. So Julian, please come. It's on, yeah. Okay, for the best photo or video, Maria Kubara, who made cool videos on each day and a lot of work. So please, Maria. And since Eric is not here, I just give his opinion that, as Eric says, I would add a special mention from the jury for the funniest tweet for Dara O'Leary, who compared the ERSA Congress to the Champions League of regional science, but unfortunately he's not in Pécs.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Now there will be another prestigious prize, the ERSA Epinos prize, and I'm calling Katarzyna Kapuścina to give the prize.
Hello everybody, my name is Katarzyna Kopczewska. I'm Epinos secretary. Being a young researcher is a quite unique state. You need to prove that your research is worth attention, that you have to show that walking new path is interesting as the race on old beaten tracks. You have to face the criticism of more experienced researchers. But you can also be awarded with this effort, for your effort, with a prize, which is unavailable for older, unfortunately, so with a Epinos prize. This year, the Epinos jury had really a tough choice. Which of the submitted papers is the closest to the high bar in this competition? Probably many young scholars are now thinking, yeah, what is the key to success? The answer is only seemingly possible. A jury in its search for the best paper looks for the balanced composition of theory, methods, data analysis, research questions, and policy implications. We look for novelty, which will be well-grounded in existing state-of-art regional science or urban studies. We also look for an interesting story as well as if the paper can be published soon. So these are the criteria. This award is seriously, extremely prestigious. As ex ante, it is usually the first award that goes to the young scholars, but ex post, when you look around, Epinos Awards go to the researchers who later are invited for keynote speeches or our community leaders. So in this 24th edition of Epinos, there were 11 competing papers, each reviewed by really distinguished scholars and Epinos committee, which consisted of our chair, Frank van Oort, who is unfortunately ill, editor of papers in regional science, Daniela Konstantin, editor of Region, Francisco Rowe, two fixed members, Michael Wirwich and Patricia Mello, and myself, Kathy Kopczewska, acting as a secretary. I also wanted to thank all the involved scholars who supported Epinos and Young Scientist sessions with their reviews and recommendations. Yeah? Without it, there wouldn't be a job, especially that there was a middle of the holidays. So this year we had really a challenging task. Yeah? We went through all the papers, the ones with very advanced, sophisticated methods and novel questions, but lacking some theory behind, or oppositely, deeply immersed in the literature with just replication study on board. However, the Epinos aims to award papers that answer essential questions and enrich the theory of regional science or urban studies, excellent if they open, not close, a path for a new wave of studies. So we give the prize today, ex aequo, to two young scholars for their papers that, to the opinion of jury, are selected for different reasons. So one of the winners is Niels Kuiper, from the University of Groningen, Netherlands, with a paper, The Effectiveness of Policy-Induced Gentrification, Evidence from Large-Scale Urban Renewal Projects in Netherlands. This paper's novelty lies in the research approach and the question that was asked. The paper is based on a unique, self-collected data set on the reconstruction of housing premises in the whole quarters of Amsterdam. Paper checks if policy assumptions are to change a socio-economic neighborhood by renewal, reconversion, and gentrification projects. What we liked in the text, that it was really well written, well organized. The problem was anchored on existing literature, estimation method was efficient in catching the question effects. However, the paper could explain more, for the full picture of inhabitants' displacement effects. Yet, the paper showcases the good skills of the researchers, and we think that it deserves the prize. And another winner is Maria Kubara from the University of Warsaw, Poland, with the paper on spatiotemporal localization patterns of technological startups, recurrent neural network in predicting intra-urban startups clusters. This paper was selected by the jury because of its methodological novelty. It deals with location decisions of technological startups, and it uses a diverse set of advanced methods to look at the identification of such clusters, their emergence, and evolution. The results come already known diffusion patterns, but the neural network method in this paper is really new to regional science, and we can really benefit, especially from the predictions. However, again, this methodology could be better integrated with theory just to get more robust research results. But anyway, both papers, after some improvements in the opinion of jury and the reviewers, are really good candidates for being published well. That's why they deserve the Epinos Award. I really hope that next year in Alicante, Epinos Award also will keep this taste of this high prestige and uniqueness we want to underline and stress. And that, again, the new wave of young scholars will apply for that, and we, again, will find the best researchers, the young generation of young researchers. So many congratulations to Niels and Maria, and please come on to the stage.
you won't be surprised that there will be another prize to give them. And I'm calling to the stage Eduardo Haddad, ERSA President, who gives a short speech, and then the two awardees.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here to award two of the most prestigious prizes from the Regional Science Association International. The first prize that I'm going to handle for two of our new fellows that are here with us today, it's the ERSA Fellows Award. And for those of you that do not know yet what's about, it's actually the Regional Science Association International Fellows, I'll read here, are distinguished scholars with a proven and recognized research record in the field of regional science during a considerable part of their scientific career. Such honored members of the Regional Science Association International are appointed after a careful nomination and selection procedure based on a broad consultation of the association membership. There is a great amount of work from the jury. I would like to thank all those that participated in the selection committees. Actually, are going to handle 2020 prize and one prize for 2022. Actually, in this year, we had three awardees, Professor Andrea Torre, that's here, but also Budi Sudumano and Frank from Ort that unfortunately could not join us in this conference. A brief words about the two recipients. I'll start with the 2020 recipient of the Fellows Award, Professor Joop van Dijk. He's a professor of regional labor market analysis and chair of the Department of Economic Geography at the Faculty of Spatial Science of the University of Groningen. His research has a strong focus on labor market issues like employment, unemployment, the dynamics of regional labor markets and migration. Other topics of interest are regional disparities, regional development and growth, regional and labor market policy evaluation, sectorial and functional change in employment and production, innovation, you name it. He gave a very nice paper on border crossing this conference. Well, I could list all his contributions here, but we can find the results of his work in a broad variety of national and international journals and books. The second recipient is Professor Andrea Torre. He's a first-class research professor at the National Institute for Agronomic Research, involved in agro-Paris tech and guest lecturer in several French universities. His research was for a long time at the crossroads of spatial and industrial economics. It has in recent years become more multidisciplinary and focused increasingly on questions related to land use planning and territorial development process. He has also published many articles and a few books, mostly on issues related to space and coordination between people or groups of people. Both have done superb work in serving the association. We have the current president of ERSA and the past president of ERSA, and I'm very pleased to invite them here so that I can hand them their award.
Okay, so thank you very much for this great honor and this great achievement for all a career at the service of regional science and all this theory related to territory, to space, to proximity for me, because I worked a lot on this topic, of course. And yesterday, when I discussed with fellows, one of the former fellows told me, it's a new life for you. And immediately, I saw it was real, because we had a free meal. So this means that, of course, that's the start of a very new life for me. So thank you very much, and enjoy.
I will ask Jalk to stay here because he's going to receive another award. And again, a very, very prestigious award. He's this year recipient of the Kono Award. The Kono Award is bestowed on regional scientists for their professional services to the association and its national and supranational sections. This year, I chaired the jury, comprised also of Lily Kimimani, Yoshiro Igano, and Jeffrey Hewins, to whom I send my appreciation for their services in this very interesting committee. And we have actually unanimously recommended Jalk to be awarded this prize for 2022. And I'll just read a brief excerpt from our motivation letter, which reads as follows. Over 3 decades, Professor Van Dijk has demonstrated a continuing, sustained commitment to enhancing the organization of regional science in his various leadership capacities. Through his leadership and dedication, Professor Van Dijk has made a difference that has promoted and enhanced regional science, and the jury feels that he would be a most deserving recipient of the Hirotada Kono Award for outstanding service to regional science. His impressive and effective participation in most regional science activities deserves recognition and gratitude.
Okay, it's a great pleasure for me to say a few words. It's a great honor for me to receive both of these awards. I have a long history in regional science, and RSAI and ERSA have been very important for my career. My first ERSA conference was in 1982 in my hometown, Groningen. So that is 40 years ago now. And I benefited a lot from that from my career. I participated also in many conferences in other parts of the world, and they were very important for my scientific career. It was also very nice to serve the organization. And of course, it's quite a lot of work. But I've always been supported by my faculty, by my colleagues, by people from the ERSA office and several others, and last but not least, by my wife, Sophia. She has been very important also in this process. So thanks also to her. And it comes not only with a cost doing services, but also with a lot of benefits. We traveled a lot, we met a lot of interesting people in various locations, very nice locations. For instance, I remember that I visited the Hungarian section meeting, I think it was Sultan 6-7 years ago, and then it was a very lively session. And a lot of Hungarian regional scientists, it was, why don't we organize a regional science congress? And you see what happened now, so that's very nice. So thanks to all of you. It was a great pleasure to receive these awards. Thanks to you, and I wish you all a great time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the Martin Beckham Prize is coming, and I'm calling Daniela Constantin to give the prize.
Thank you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues from the audience. I am Daniela Constantin, professor of regional and urban economics at Bucharest University of Economic Studies and one of the editors of papers in regional science. In this capacity, our editor-in-chief, Professor Rosella Nicolini, who could not come here in Pécs, has entrusted me with the honoring mission to announce the winner of the Martin Beckman Prize for 2022. But first of all, let me present you in a few words the significance of this award. The Martin Beckman Award is granted by Papers of Regional Science, the flagship journal of the Regional Science Association International, and the label of excellence for the entire regional science community for the best article on regional science published in this journal. The award is established to recognize and honor the tremendous career and contribution of Professor Martin Beckman, an internationally celebrated regional scientist and economist of outstanding merit, who is also a foundation fellow of the Regional Science Association International. The committee for the 2022 award was composed by 3 RSAI fellows: Professor Roberta Capello, the past editor-in-chief of Papers in Regional Science, Professor Randall Jackson, and Professor William Strange. And the winner is the paper entitled "The Persistent Pay Gap Between Easterners and Westerners in Germany, a Quarter Century After Reunification," published by Papers in Regional Science in 2021, volume 100, issue number 3, by Heather Dickey and Alessa Widmeyer from Queen's Management School, Belfast, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And the motivation is as follows. The excellent contribution tackles 2 relevant orders of questions. First, the sources of the wage gap between East and West Germany, and the wage differentials within the 2 regions. Unlike much prior work, the convergence process is considered up to the present in order to understand the persistence of the regional wage gap. One of the salient results of this publication is that part of the wage gap between the former East Germany remains unexplained. The conceptual framework is solid and the problem is situated beautifully in the relevant literature. The analysis is innovative and thorough, and the writing exceptionally readable. I would also mention that the award carries a cash prize of the equivalent of £500 sterling. I warmly congratulate the winners and wish them many new wonderful accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now there will be the RSPP prize. And I'm calling Carlos Azzoni to hand over the prize.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Azzoni, professor of economics at the University of São Paulo, Brazil. I am a member of the editorial board of Regional Science Policy and Practice. On behalf of the editorial board and the editor-in-chief, Tomás Dentinho, I have the honor to announce the prize for the best paper published in 2021 and at the Journal of Regional Science Policy and Practice. Out of 103 papers published, 2 were chosen as to be honored today, and there was a jury. There is a process of selecting the papers, but the jury composed of Thomas Dentin, the editor-in-chief, Neil Reed, also part of editorial board, but not related to the special issues, Gordon Mulligan, David Plain, and Philip McCann. So the jury came with, out of 103 papers, with 2 papers that I would like to announce. And the authors are here, and we'll announce later on. The first paper is, Does Population Decline Led to a Populist Voting Markup? A Case Study of the Netherlands. The paper aims to analyze the impact of depopulation, the context and the party programs on election results in the Netherlands. It's a very interesting and robust paper with a promising impact on methodology, public participation, policy making, and regional development. The authors are Evelyn van Leeuwen, Somalia Halek Vega, and Vera Hagenborn. The other paper is Spatial and Non-Spatial Proximity in University and Industry Collaboration, Mutual Reinforcement and Decreasing Effects. This paper examines the role of proximity between university and the industry to explain innovation in Brazil. It's a very interesting paper linking cognitive proximity with innovation in a developing country. The authors are Emerson Gomes Santos, Renato Garcia, who's here, Veneziano Araújo, Suelene Mascarini, and Ariana Costa. So I'd like to call them to receive Evelyn and Renato to receive the certificates.
Thank you very much. And now there will be another prize, and probably the last and most prestigious prize is given here. That will be the ERSA Prize 2022. And I'm calling Evelyn van Leeuwen to hand over the prize.
Yeah, so after all these wonderful prizes and wonderful people, it's finally we're coming to indeed the most prestigious prize. Also a prize that you don't get so easily, because you also need to give a presentation of half an hour about your research to show why we selected the prize. And so I'm very happy to first announce Isabella Tomas, who is the jury of the prize committee. She will do the laudatio, and after that Diego Puga will give his speech. Isabella. You're muted.
No, I'm not muted.
Yeah, it works.
Well, sorry not to be there, but it's my pleasure and an honor to introduce the 2022 ERSA Prize, Professor Diego Puga. But before making a very short laudatio, I would like to remind very briefly the objective of the prize and how the selection was made. I think it's important. Well, the ERSA Prize in Regional Sciences recognizes since 2003 outstanding regional scientists at the European level. This means persons that are considered as examples, not only in terms of research and publication records, which would be too easy, but also for their contribution to society and or for their implication in the regional science community. So the ERSA awards the prize based on the recommendation of a jury composed of 6 scientists. 4 are based in Europe and 2 represent other parts of the world. So the jury acts totally independently and tries to be as objective as possible. The jury composed a short list of renowned scientists, and each jury member independently graded them according to 3 criteria: research, society, and regional sciences. So, of course, the candidates grade very high, but Professor Puga ranked first. So, in the name of the members of the prize committee, I'm very pleased to introduce and deeply congratulate Professor Diego Puga as the 20th recipient of the ERSA Prize for his outstanding contributions to regional sciences. Professor Puga has a background in economics and got his PhD in the London School of Economics with Anthony Venables as supervisor a long time ago, maybe. Diego Puga is currently professor of economics in Madrid at the Center of Monetary and Financial Studies. He formerly held several positions in London, Toronto, and Barcelona. But the jury particularly also appreciated the high quality of the research conducted by Diego in urban economics, in economic geography, in international trade and institution. He co-authored papers in prestigious journals such as the American Economic Review, Econometrica, Quarterly Journal of Economics, or the Review of Economic Studies. So his work has already been recognized by several awards or fellowships and research grants, among which the prestigious Advanced Grant of the European Research Council. Moreover, the jury particularly appreciated the fact that Professor Puga is a recent member of the Spain Council of Economic Advisors and of a multidisciplinary work group at the Ministry of Innovation, providing advice and support to the government in Spain on scientific matters related to the COVID-19 and its consequences. So the entire prize committee was unanimously impressed by your CV, Diego, and your involvement, and is proud to award you today. So on behalf of all the members of the committee, I'm very happy to congratulate you and to give you the floor.
Well, first of all, thank you sincerely to the European Regional Science Association, to Isabel, to the rest of the prize committee. I was very surprised when I got the news that I had the prize. I wasn't expecting it at all. I'm also very grateful and honored. I'm well aware of the long list of very prominent and imaginative scholars who have got this prize before me. Some of whom are here. A list that includes many people who I greatly admire, who I've learned a lot from, and I'm very honored and grateful and humbled by the prize committee deciding to give me the same prize that they got before me. So as part of this, I was asked to give a short presentation on my research. So I'm going to do that now, hoping it's not just a test to decide whether it was a big mistake after all or not. Although my research has covered a number of topics that Isabel has mentioned, so I've done work on regional inequalities, but you already had a great lecture by Michael Sorper on the first day on that topic. I've worked on international trade. I've worked on history and institutions, but the biggest part of my research has actually been about the benefits and cost of big cities, of urban density, right? So that's the topic I want to focus on today. So if we think about what's made cities be where they are and become as big as they have over the course of history, this is something that's been changing over time, right? So early on, cities were located and cities became big in places where land was fertile and it was easy to get food to feed the urban population. Then, as trade started to become more widespread, it became very important to have access to both natural and artificial modes of transportation, roads, waterways, etc. Then, with the Industrial Revolution, being close to energy sources and to primary materials became very important. And of course, all of these things are still important today, but much less than before. When firms try to figure out what's the best place for them to be in, they care much less about things that are intrinsic about the place and more about who they're going to have close by. What are the workers, what are the firms are going to be in the vicinity? Of course, this makes this topic of study very complicated. First of all, because it creates immense interdependence. I want to be where other people are, but those people are there because they want to be close to me and close to others as well. So this is the first complication. The second complication is that the benefits, most of the benefits that we get from being close to each other are things that are hard to observe and measure and quantify, like the sort of ideas that we spread, how we interact with each other, and so on. So this makes it very challenging, but also very interesting. So what are these advantages that make firms and workers want to be close to each other? So first of all, the scale, the density, the diversity of big cities, of course, have many benefits. They boost productivity, they boost innovation, they provide workers with valuable experiences, with lots of opportunities to use that experience. They improve access to goods and services. They also encourage agents to build more efficiently, to move around more efficiently, and they also allow us to share scarce amenities with each other more carefully. But not everything about high density is good. Density also comes with cost, and the biggest of those costs is that the cost of being in places that are very dense is of course higher, and moving around in those places is also higher. So this creates what Masa Fujita and Jack Teese, one of the earlier recipients of this prize, have called the fundamental trade-off of urban economics between these benefits of being in cities with lots of people with high density and the costs that that density entails. So where do we see that? Well, the first place where we see those benefits of density is obviously if we look at productivity. These agglomeration economies, after all, are about firms, workers becoming more productive if they're in a place where there's lots of other workers and firms around. So if we go out and measure productivity at the firm level in different places, when we plot average productivity against a measure of density or size, we see this kind of relationship. This graph actually comes from a paper with some of my regular co-authors in Econometrica a few years back, and this is for French cities. Now, when you see that, one possible interpretation of that is, of course, that it is this density, this big size of cities that is causing productivity to increase. So firms are becoming more productive because they're in this place where there's lots of other firms around. They can share suppliers, they can share ideas, there's lots of flows of information and workers and so on. But it's not the only possible interpretation. Another possibility is that firms don't change their productivity depending on where they are. It could also simply be that these big cities are tougher, more competitive markets. So there are more difficult places for firms to survive. As a result, the weakest firms cannot make it. So if you take out the least productive firms from the firm distribution, you end up also with higher average productivity. So one of the things we did in this paper in Econometrica with Pierre-Philippe Combe and Laurent Gobillon and Gilles Duranton and Sébastien Roux is to develop a method to distinguish between these two alternative stories. So essentially, the idea there is that although agglomeration and selection have similar implications for average productivity, they will look very differently when instead of just looking at the average, you look at the entire distribution of productivity. So selection is going to be like a storm that sinks the weakest boats. So you just take the weakest firms out and the rest remain. Instead, agglomeration is going to be like the tide that lifts all boats up. So when we look at the entire distribution, if what's happening is selection, we should see something like this. So there, the dashed line is the distribution of firm productivities in small cities. This is a hypothetical example. This is just from a model. Okay, so this is just theory. And then the continuous line would be the distribution of productivity in a big city. So you've seen the weakest firms have not been able to make it in the big city. You've taken out the left tail of the distribution, because this is a probability distribution, it still has to add up to 1. That's why you see the extra mass on the right. So this is what it should look like if what's driving higher productivity in big cities is simply a selection, removing the weakest firms. Instead, if what's happening is agglomeration, we should see every firm benefiting. So what you should see is a right shift of the entire distribution. This, of course, in the simple graph, assumes that every firm is benefiting in the same way from agglomeration economies. It could also be that firms that are per se more productive benefit even more. In this case, you should see not just a right shift of the distribution, you should also see a dilation, the distribution stretching out. So this is what you would see in that case. So that's theory. What happens if we look at the data? Where this is what it looks like for France. You can see it's very similar to this last picture. So the best way to get the actual distribution of firm productivity in big cities is to take the small city distribution, move it to the right, and stretch it out a bit. And that gives you a very, very, very close fit to the big city distribution. So there in the paper, we developed a methodology to do this precisely, and we find that the TFP distribution, the total factor productivity distribution in big cities, is best approximated by right-shifting the distribution of small cities by 9% and dilating it by a factor of 1.2 without any truncation. What this is telling you is that firms in denser French local labor markets are becoming more productive precisely because they're there, and the advantage is big. They're close to 10% more productive. But the advantage is much greater if the firm intrinsically is more productive. So firms in the top quartile of the productive distribution get a close to 15% boost in productivity, whereas firms in the bottom quartile only get about a 5% boost, and there's no difference in selection. Okay, and the interpretation of this, it's easy to think about it. If you think about what much of the economy in a country like France looks like these days, right? So if you think about, say, two car manufacturers, imagine Peugeot and Renault deciding whether they want to be in the same city or not. Well, they are selling cars not just in the same city, they're selling cars throughout France and in fact throughout Europe and other countries. So being close to each other is really not going to make competition that much tougher. But by being in the same place, they can share suppliers. When one of them has a good year and the other one is having a bad year, the one who's having a good year can recruit workers that used to work for the other firm and so on. So this is consistent with a situation where the market is very global, but agglomeration economies are quite local, and they decline with space very rapidly. Okay, so that's one first context in which we can see agglomeration economies. A second context is, instead of looking at productivity, we can also see agglomeration economies and the benefits of big cities in earnings. So this picture here is raw data. This is simply average earnings in Spanish cities, plotted against a measure of density. This is not just, just as a comment on the side, this is just a measure of density that's trying to be quite robust, which is what we call experience density. So this is looking at how many people are within 10 kilometers of the average worker, okay? And what we find, of course, is that there's a very strong positive relationship. And you might think, well, sure, but, workers in Madrid, in Barcelona, they're quite different from workers in Cádiz. They might be more educated. They might be working in sectors that are generally higher paying. But even, after control for education and sector and occupation and lots of individual characteristics, you still find a very strong positive relationship. Why is this a sign of agglomeration economies? After all, this doesn't mean that workers are better off, because by working in a city like Madrid, of course, they get high wage, but they also have to pay a lot for their dwelling, they also have to incur a long and congested commute. So there are benefits and costs. But if you want to think about why this shows that there's an advantage in terms of productivity, you have to look at it from the side of the firm. For the worker, high wages are a good thing. High land and dwelling prices are a bad thing. From the point of view of firms, both those things, the price of labor and the price of land, if they're high, both those things are bad. So there must be something else making up for it. There must be some advantage that makes firms willing to pay higher wages in denser, bigger cities. So that's why we can see this as a sign of agglomeration economies. A nice aspect about looking at this on the side of workers in terms of their earnings is that it also gives us some idea about where these advantages might be coming from. So we've known for some time that people earn more in cities than in rural areas. If we look at cities of different sizes, different density, we also see within cities a positive relationship between density and earnings. You could think, well, this is the workers being different, but as I said before, this is not just about the workers being different. And this is something that you see, not just controlling for characteristics that we can measure and observe, like sector, occupation, education, but even things that are not observable that we can capture with worker fixed effects using panel data. Okay, this is something that Glesser-Marais or Comdur-Anton-Gobillon have shown using worker fixed effects. It's also not because of reverse causality. It's not that some places have intrinsic advantages and because of that they become big. The relationship is really from size and density to productivity. For a long time, these advantages were seen as something that was mostly attached to being in a particular place at a particular time. Already some early work by Glesser-Marais looked at recent migrants into a city comparing to older migrants and showed that these advantages might be increasing over time, and that suggested there might be something to do with learning. What we did in this paper with Jorge de la Roca in the Review of Economic Studies recently was to try to go deeper into that and to make it more precise. So essentially what we do there is to estimate a regression for earnings, looking at individual and job characteristics, tracking workers over time, so we can include a worker fixed effect, but with one small but crucial innovation. Instead of assigning a value to people's experience that is common across space, we allow experience to have a different value depending on where people get it and depending on where they use it. What we find is that the value of experience depends a lot on where you get it, not so much on where you use it. So if you think of what is the standard estimation that people were doing before, it looks something like this. Okay, so there on the horizontal axis, you have years worked. On the vertical axis, you have a measure of a gap. Okay, so you can think here of two friends who are identical in every respect, observable and observable. They grew up in the same place, went to the same school, have similar ability, both observable and non-observable. The only difference is that one of them, right after finishing education, goes to work to Madrid, and the other one stays in the medium-sized city in Spain, Santiago de Compostela. You can see that, the gap, that creates a gap in earnings, that's about 10% between them. So the traditional view is that this is a gap that was associated with working in Madrid rather than Santiago. So you got it straight away after moving there, it remained the same, and then if you left, say after 5 years, you lost it completely. Our estimation, allowing for the value of experience to differ, instead gives you a different picture, one that looks like this. So what we find is that, yes, straight away, the friend that went to Madrid earns 10% more. But that gap does not stay stable, but instead grows over time. The experience that this person acquires in Madrid is more valuable, and that makes the earnings gap between these two identical friends grow over time. So after 5 years, the gap is over 25%. And after 10 years, it's close to 40%. Perhaps even more interesting, what happens if this person who went to Madrid decides to return to Santiago after only 5 years? Well, we see a drop. That's this line there, right? So we see a drop, but there's nothing in the estimation that forces this drop to be the same as the initial jump. It just happens to be. So basically, the person loses whatever they got straight away, but everything that they've accumulated in between in terms of more valuable experience is something that's portable. They take this valuable experience with them from Madrid back to Santiago. So this is interesting because it tells you not just that there's disadvantages, but actually that lots of disadvantages, about half of them, come from this extra value of experience that you get in big cities, and that this extra value of experience is something that you take away with you. You might think this is something special about Spain. Well, it's not, right? So people have actually replicated this paper for lots of different countries, finding similar results. This is results for the US. Replace Madrid with New York, Santiago with Oklahoma, you get a very similar picture. Okay, so, and then something else that's interesting is that this benefit, just like we found for firms, that more productive firms benefit even more for being in a dense location, with work is something similar. More able workers, as measured by this work ethics effect, also benefit more from being in a big city. So this points to this learning advantage being important, and being especially important for highly skilled workers. When you see that, given that more able workers benefit more from being in a big city, and given that big cities are more costly for everyone, you might expect some important sorting. You might expect more able workers to decide to go to big cities more often. But when you look at the data, that's not what you see. You see that in terms of big observable characteristics like education, but if you measure more precisely in terms of, say, in data sets where you have actually more detailed measures about ability, or looking at fixed effects in earnings regressions, you don't see big differences in terms of distributions. So why is that? Well, one reason is that mobility is relatively reduced. Not lots of people move. And I'll come back to that a bit more in a moment. But then even if you focus just on people who move, you don't see very strong flows determined by ability. So in a paper that coincidentally was just published online today by the Journal of the European Economic Association with Jorge de la Roca and Gianmarco Ottaviano, we offer a new explanation. And the idea there is that, sure, people might be aware that if they're more able, it makes more sense for them to go to a big city. But most of us have a very wrong idea, especially early on in life, about whether we are very able or not. So in this paper, we have a model about that, but we also have data for the US, where we have both measures of ability and measures of self-confidence. And what we find is that it's not the people who are very able who go to big cities, it's the people who think they are very able who go to big cities. So it's the self-confident who go there. And then once they've gone there, this determines a lot of what happens in life to them, so they might not find it so advantageous to change their mind, even if they realize they've made a mistake. Okay, so this is about non-traditional characteristics driving location, as opposed to just ability. And I say this is very, very strongly supported by the data. But that's not the only reason why we don't see very big sorting. Another reason is that there's little mobility, and even for people who move, these considerations like agglomeration economies and the cost of cities and these things that are common to everyone are not the only thing that matters. There are lots of components of a migration decision that are very idiosyncratic. And when we model these things, we often treat that as just some noise, things that we don't know about, and we just put them in our models and in our estimations to deal with all of this noise that there is in the data. And we can see that because many people don't move, migration flows react very strongly, gross flows are much smaller than net flows. Okay, so sorry, net flows are much smaller than gross flows. And often you see people who look very similar moving in opposite directions at the same time. So in this recent paper, what we do is we try to see how important one aspect of that is, and that is how important it is for people to think about where their friends and family are located. So to do that, what we do is we use anonymized cell phone data. So for a big cell phone operator in Switzerland with more than half of the country as customers, we have their whole network of calls over the span of a year. So we know who's calling who and who knows who. So then we can check how likely it is that you move or not, depending on how many friends and family you have close by. And we find that if you're very connected close by, you're less likely to move. More interestingly, when you move, you're much more likely to go to a location where you already know lots of people. And then we can see what's driving that, and we can see that there are basically 3 reasons. First, you like being close to friends. That makes the place more enjoyable. Second, having friends there reduces some such frictions. For instance, it's difficult to find an apartment, so having friends in a place where apartments are very scarce, it's even more useful. Also, social connections give you hard-to-find local information. And it's not only your friends that matter, but also friends of your friends that you don't know directly. Okay, so this is something that may seem secondary, but actually taking this into account doubles our ability to predict where people are going to go relative to a standard regression, where we only look at how good a fit a place is to your observable characteristics. Okay, so what I've been talking about is things that make dense, big places more attractive. But it would be wrong to think that big cities, dense cities, are just a scale-up version of small cities, simply with bigger benefits and costs. And in fact, over the last few decades, there have been important changes that have made cities increasingly different from each other. Some because the firms and the workers that locate in them are intrinsically different, but partly because, as I showed you, going there itself makes you more different. But also, as big cities and small cities have become more different, they have also become more dependent on each other. And this is a topic on which I've also done work over the years. So you've already seen an example where workers can go to a big city, get valuable experience, and then use it in a small city. That's one example of interdependence. An earlier example in research, in my work, is from this paper in the American Economic Review with Gilles Duranton on nursery cities, where we show that innovations most frequently arise in bigger, more diverse cities, because diversity fosters innovation, experimentation. But then once firms are more stable, once firms have standardized on what they do, they actually relocate the production of those things that are more established, more standard, to smaller places where they can save on costs. So you have this life cycle where products and ideas start in big, diverse cities and eventually relocate to small cities. That's another example of interdependence. A third example, also from work with Gilles Duranton, is from this paper in the Journal of Economics in 2005, where we show that cities used to be, big and small cities used to be very similar in terms of what they had, and cities were mostly specialized by sector. But increasingly, cities have become much more specialized by function, where we've seen that as the cost of doing business at a distance and managing plants at a distance has been falling, firms have started to separate their activities and concentrated management and innovation and business services in the big cities, and instead relocated production to the small cities. So cities have become more different depending on their size, but they have also become much more interdependent. Everything I've been showing you so far has stressed the good side of density. But density also comes with costs, and that creates 2 trade-offs. One that you can see in choosing where to locate within a city, and another one that you can see in choosing where to locate across cities. So within each city, if you decide whether you want to live in a more central place or a more remote place, there's a trade-off between better accessibility close to the center and higher housing costs if you go there. In choosing whether to live in a bigger city, there's also a trade-off between this higher productivity and earnings, but also the costs. So these 2 trade-offs are important ingredients in a recent paper that's still not published with Gilles Duranton. And that trade-off at the, when you look at cross cities would look like this, where if you think about consumption or well-being of people, depending on the city size, you can see that it's going to first increase and then decrease with city size, and then that trade-off will depend on what city we're looking at, the sort of sector they have, and so on. So in this paper, what we do is we develop a system of cities framework with this agglomeration urban cost trade-off, location heterogeneity, planning regulation, lots of different components. The agglomeration part of the paper is fairly standard. It's very related to past research that we've done. I guess the 2 main innovations in this most recent work that I've done are first, to look more carefully at the cost side of cities. So think about this cost of transportation, this cost of housing. The second one is to think of how this trade-off between the benefits and the cost of big cities gets resolved in practice. So in urban economics, for a long time, it's been quite standard to follow the approach of Werner Henderson in this wonderful paper he has from his PhD thesis, published in the American Economic Review back in the 1970s, where we think about cities as being created by competitive developers. And that's a nice construct, one that's been very useful in advancing theory and constructing these models of cities. But it's one that, if you think about present day, leaves some important things aside. And for this reason, we thought it was useful to try to build a similar framework, but one where we instead determined the trade-off between the advantages and disadvantages of big cities through a political economic mechanism that considers regulation, and the fact that regulation is typically controlled by incumbents who already live in the city, who set that regulation to the best interest, not necessarily in the interest of people who might be thinking about moving in to the city for the first time. So let me just, I have no time to go through all of this in detail, but let me give you just two snapshots of a couple of things that we do here. So as I mentioned, the main two innovations here are first looking at the cost side of cities, and the second, resolving this trade-off. On the cost side, we try to model transportation costs in a careful way. So this equation there is simply telling you that the cost of moving in a city depends on where you live in the city, and that's what that gamma parameter is doing that, right? So x there is the distance to the center. This is telling you that people who live further away in the city tend to travel longer, and this is costly. And that gamma is that elasticity. Then there's also a cost of travel that differs across cities, and that depends on technology. That's what this tau is doing. And also depends on congestion, where these big cities are going to be more congested, and its population, and this theta is capturing congestion. Okay, so with those three parameters, we can actually capture different aspects of this transportation. One of the nice things I think about this work has been that this model is not just a theoretical model. It's a model with which we try to get a good handle on the data. We've tried to have this really as a dialogue between theory and empirics. So one of the things about the model is that it gives us not just one, but several ways to estimate key parameters in ways that are theoretically found. So for instance, that parameter that I just mentioned, gamma, that starts off as the elasticity of the distance that you travel with respect to distance to the center. So we can go and estimate that using household level travel data from the NHCS in the US. But then there's a very important insight that we have from some of the early pioneers in our field. If you think of the Alonso Muth framework, if you think about the monocentric city model, when we think about gradients, perhaps the biggest insight of that model is what we usually call the Alonso Muth condition. We often see this just as a quantitative statement. As you move away from the city center, transportation will become more costly, housing will become cheaper. But it's actually a quantitative statement. What the theory says is that these things should exactly match. The saving in transportation costs should be exactly matched by an increase in housing costs. So we can estimate this gamma parameter also looking at housing data. The theory says that the elasticity of travel costs with respect to distance should be exactly the same, but with opposite side, as the elasticity of prices of houses with respect to distance. And that's exactly what you find. It's 0.07 in both cases, at the same level of resolution for the US. But then our model doesn't look at just one city. It has a general equilibrium about a system of cities. So the same gamma parameter also appears as a trade-off when you think about the cross-city location decision. So that gives us a third equation where we can estimate the same parameter with yet another source of data, and we get also exactly 0.07. So this gives us lots of confidence, not just on that number, but actually on the whole way this model is built, right? Final aspect that we incorporate into the model is this idea about regulation. Okay, so this is not something that we normally think of a lot in these models, although a lot of people in the field have been stressing the importance of regulation. If you think about what regulation means, well, in terms of how our, and I'll finish with this, okay? So if you think about, if you look at our model and think about, more standard models of urban systems and the monocentric model, there are lots of things in common. So big cities are more productive, people earn more in bigger cities. There's also a cost associated with that. If you look within cities, this is some house price gradients for the US. House price at the center will be higher. Also, cities that have bigger population will also tend to be bigger in spatial size. But there's one important difference. In the standard monocentric model, in standard system cities models, the prediction is that house price at the center will be higher in bigger cities, but house prices at the edge should be very similar. Because those prices would just be the price of vacant land, which is going to be very similar everywhere, plus construction costs, which are also going to be very similar everywhere. Our model incorporates regulation. So that means that the price of housing at the periphery should also incorporate these regulation costs. And therefore, because the model says that regulation is going to be systematically higher in bigger cities, we should also see higher prices at the periphery. That's what you see for these 5 cities there. That's what you see for cities overall in the US. We say this is because of regulation. Regulation is indeed more stringent in big cities. The model says this is not about population only, actually geography matters. So, intuitively you might think, well, if a city is very constrained geographically to expand, that's also, it's already acting as regulation, so maybe people don't need to regulate as much. Our model says no. Actually, you think about places that are very constrained, like, you see LA there, beige is mountains, green is national parks, blue is the ocean, not much place to grow. What the model says is that in the cities that are very constrained, the same increase in population creates a bigger congestion for people who are there. So they should care more about it and restrict more. So you see more regulation, not less, and that's indeed what we also see in the data. And then, as a result, you get this big gap. So here, we actually try to back out what it would cost to replace a house at the edge of a city in different places in the US. It's important here that you cannot look at the price of the land that's used for the house, because that is already land that is allowed for building. So you have to look for agricultural land close by. So we do that. We price agricultural land close to the edge of the city. We look at city-specific construction costs. We add that up. And still, you can see, there's a wedge between actual prices and that cost of replacement that goes up to something like $500,000 in places like San Francisco and Diego. Okay, so this turns out to be very important. And with that, I'll finish. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your wonderful story. If you have any questions or you want to meet Diego Puga, he will be here afterwards and also be at the gala dinner. So he also invited you to then come to him with questions and suggestions. And I think, well, also hearing the applaud, that we really appreciate your speech. You're a bit afraid that the speech was to make sure a test, but if it was not, of course. If it was a test, then you survived it in a wonderful way.
Thank you very much. And now, what is similar to 2022 and 2023? In 23, there will be another ERSA Congress. Unfortunately, it's not in Pécs, but in another very nice city of Alicante, and I'm calling the ERSA 2022 Congress Local Organization Committee, Paloma de la Paz and Fernando Moroyon. Please come.
Good afternoon. thank you very much for ERSA to give us the opportunity to organize the next conference. Let me introduce the organizers. It's not only the University of Alicante. Well, I have to introduce myself. My name is Paloma Taltabul from Alicante University, but I'm, in fact, the on-site organizer, because this conference will be led and supported by the three institutions: the regional association in the Spanish chapter, represented here by Fernando Rubiera, who is the president of ASR. The regional chapter, the Valencian region chapter of the regional association, which is represented here by Luisa Lama, she is the president, and, well, University of Alicante, who is the site. And the three of us will organize the conference. I have to say that probably it will be very difficult for us to organize, especially seeing the high quality of this conference in Pécs. So I want to congratulate our colleagues in Pécs. This is a wonderful, wonderful city and marvelous building. I love this building. So you will see that our building is quite new. Newer than this. But we will try to do our best, and we have prepared some, well, special events, starting for a great program. Thanks to you. Please, do come and give the quality the conference normally has been here, good papers and great presentations. This is the first and more important thing from our view. And the second is, well, we will try to surprise you with social events, bringing you to a castle 400 meters up, and with the gala dinner and other, we will prepare during this year, another social events to make you to be comfortable in Alicante. This is a good opportunity for the second time, to visit the Spanish flavor of this conference in the second city after Barcelona, which was fantastic and very well organized. I advise you that Vicente is with us. Vicente Royuela was the organizer in Barcelona 12 years ago. Will be next year with us as well, and you have the opportunity to see another different city. So in Spain, cities are quite different each other. So Madrid and Barcelona, the largest one, are different. You just visit both. But if you move to Valencia or Alicante or Malaga, are quite very different. So it's good to have the opportunity to taste the flavor. We have prepared a very short video for you to see what are you going to see. Presenting or showing you the city first, and our university second. Well, as you see, the video is a bit slower than I expected. But what are your universities? Quite different university than others, and you are very, very welcome to them. So I hope to see you next year in Alicante. You are very welcome, and we will try to be as best as our Pécs colleagues have been. Thank you very much.
And now I'm calling André Torre and Eduardo Haddad to give over the flag to the Alicante representatives. And now there will be one more session in this event, and there will be the short closing speeches. And I'm calling the co-chair of this local organization committee, Zoltán Gál, to give his closing speech.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, dear Congress participants, I'm sure that the follow-up would be similarly nice or even less challenging. I am pleased to welcome you in the main aula of our 655 years old university under the mural of its foundation by the Hungarian king of Louis d'Anjou, and also next to, in the other corner, the sculpture of Sissi, Queen Elizabeth, the Habsburg Empress, whom after the university was named, up until the communists have changed all the names in the 1950s. But back to my task. We are over a successful conference, and I am very happy that after 2 years of unprecedented break of suffering from not having conferences, we managed to organize it finally. I hope you enjoyed the 61st ERSA Congress and you had opportunity to listen to interesting presentation and make new professional contact. The conference was historic in the life of the ERSA. It was the ever longest 5-day-long conference divided into online and on-site part. And also, this was the first time when we had to organize a hybrid, a mixed type of conference. A large number of additional, to this, a large number of special sessions were had to be allocated. So we had altogether more than just about 400 on-site papers with more than 300 online presentation. And that was even more challenging from IT and logistical perspective to allocate and put everything together when even presentation in the same special session were partly online and on-site. We had on-site participants from more than, I think about 37 countries, as far as I know, but the ERSA office is still calculating the number of on-site participants besides the speakers. So it was also interesting. Okay, back to the time of 3 years ago, when I came up with the title of the conference at the EOC meeting in Bolzano, February of 2020, just a week about the outbreak of the major COVID epidemic in Europe, we didn't think that the proposed title of our conference theme would be even more relevant after 2.5 years. Its setting, reflecting all the major contemporary challenges in our field. We didn't think that digitalization would be essential for not just our daily life, but to organize ERSA conferences. Although it can increase disparities, digital divide, but at the same time, it gives opportunity even for the ERSA to connect, include those distant scholars, those young scientists and participants, online participants from low-income countries. We also didn't think that borderless Europe would be for a while, once again, Europe of the borders again, which restricted regional relations, free flows of peoples, including scientists and academics, and the relationship between the state and the regions, the relationship between the EU and the member states were redefined in the context as ongoing crisis management. All this makes cohesion and a strong Europe and interregional ties, last but not least, regional science research even more important for us. We listened finally 6 excellent keynote presentations from the most eminent representative of regional science, who presented their current research on growing inequalities, territorial disparities, corporate powers, also on sustainable solution in urban and regional development, innovation and entrepreneurship. Special thanks to our excellent keynotes. In addition, we had 3 policy-oriented roundtables organized around the sub-themes of the conference, generated lots of debate and interest in line with the ERSA main missions to work with very closely policymakers, inform scientific research, and contribute to evidence-based policy. Yet, I would like to especially thanks to those participants who came to Pécs in person, despite the increasing number of external and internal risks, as they not only show the confidence in ERSA or the local organizers, but also demonstrated that without active personal networking participation, as well as technical excursion, and without get-together party, even if you have to chase your grill, but also without gala dinner, no conference can be considered as business as usual. Finally, I would like to thanks to those without whom this successful conference wouldn't have been possible. My thanks goes to the president of ERSA, André Torre, whose professional and constructive support was indispensable in overcoming all the challenges together. Also, I have to mention already, we talked about a bit, Joop van Dijk, the former president of ERSA, who first supported the idea actually 7 years ago when he was invited as a keynote to the Hungarian Regional Science Association annual conference in my beautiful hometown of northern city of Eger. Many thanks to the ERSA office staff, Maristella, Nurul, and Eric, who is missing, but he done a tremendous job on communication as well, who helped the local organizers in every way. Also, I have to mention Artur Ojhotsky, the treasurer of the ERSA, for providing helpful budget scenarios during our calculation. The leaders of the 3 institutions of our local consortium, the leaders of the University of Pécs, the 2 deans, Zoltán Sepp, the former dean, and the acting dean who was present in the welcome reception, András Takács. Also, I would like to mention the director of the Center for Regional Studies, and also the Regional Science Association. But also, the Faculty of Business and Economics has a very excellent management and organizing team. I have to quote first the most efficient faculty director in our university, namely Gábor Rácz, who even managed to get the gala dinner changed at the last minutes for meteorological region, as we heard. And I just hope this doesn't cause any firing in the lock, even if there is no rain. Actually, just during this session, I just checked the more reliable meteorological apps and shows the ever clearest sky during this week for this event. But you would be benefited, actually, you would be benefited to see our second largest concert hall of the country, which we originally prepared for welcome reception. I congratulate very much the backbone of our local organizing team, the marketing team, namely the two leaders, Judith Szentendrei and Ákos Nagy, who cannot be present, and their student assistances. So let's applaud and congratulate. So they were behind all smooth movement of on-site organization, and students proved to be very efficient during with their technical help. I have to mention the IT team and its leader, Tibor Fehér, and also the university television team, who managed successfully all broadcasting, streaming, or online and keynote session, which would have been even more challenging for the BBC television as well. So it was a really great work. And finally, I have to mention Gábor Klesz, without whom the financial flows wouldn't have been that easy and smooth during hyperinflations and ongoing constant depreciation of the forint. So let's also congratulate them. Last but not least, I have to mention a very well-known figure of our local organizing team, without whom this conference wouldn't have been run so smoothly. The secretary, the LOC secretary, which is also innovation in the history of this conference, is Balázs Páger, who was the key person and communicator in all phases of the conference team, managing, organizing all flight connections and the best accommodation. So the congratulations also went to us. At last, I hope you had opportunity, besides the conference, enjoy the sights of our historic city and discover the other parts, or will be opportunity for you in the coming weekend to discovering the other parts of our charming periphery, the so-called Hungarian Tuscany. And I also hope that you leave the conference with very good memories and you will come back soon. I wish once again all the best for the Alicante organizing team and much less challenges. I hope so. And finally, I wish you a pleasant evening for the gala dinner. As I mentioned, at the second largest concert and congress center, rain-proof concert hall, which is very important, and enjoy the evening. So see you soon in the gala dinner.
Now I'm calling Eduardo Haddad, ERSA president, to give his closing speech.
Well, while listening to Zoltan's speech, I was thinking how symbolic this conference has been, not only for ERSA, but for the whole Regional Science Association International. After 2 years of online business, our colleagues here in Hungary, the ERSA administration, took the risk to face the challenge of providing us with this beautiful gathering in presence that we all have missed in the recent time. I really appreciate what you all have done, Laszlo, Zoltan, Andre, and the whole team that I know it's not easy to organize such a conference, and that's really a very successful one. So I start my final words by thanking you all, congratulating you all for facing the challenge and provided us with an amazing 1 week of interaction. And we missed that for the last 2 years, and I thank you for providing us with that. I think it's always nice to remember that we are part of a global expanding community. Right? The Regional Science Association International is here for everybody. We are expanding actually in the last few years. We are putting a lot of effort in expanding in the Global South, especially in Africa. We see already many participants here from Africa. Hopefully this number is increasing. And the format you provided, as Zoltan mentioned, you allowed people from lower income, more peripheral areas to start being part of this community, and hopefully in the future you'll be able to interact in presence with all our colleagues from different parts of the world. As part of a global regional science network, I think we praise such interactions, which are an essential part of our professional and social activities, right? And in so being, I would like to invite you all to attend our different regional science events worldwide, here in Europe, be it in Latin America, in North America, in Africa, and in Asia. There will be many opportunities. I think we are all eager to get together, go to different places, and so that I look forward to seeing you again. If not in the coming month, early next year, at the latest, I hope to see you all in Alicante. That will be another successful ERSA event, as always have been. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I'm calling André Torre, President of ERSA, to give his closing speech.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, all the good things have to achieve at the moment, and this is the case of this Congress as well. So for me, and I hope for you, it has been a great pleasure to welcome you and to participate to this 61st Congress on disparities in a digitalization post-COVID world in a beautiful city of Pécs. This edition, as you know, it has been repeated several times, has been a very peculiar one, because we are back partly to physical meetings, and we had 3 days on very rich online meeting, but also 2 days on very good online. With 7 keynote speakers, 3 roundtables, 7 young researchers sessions, and many parallel sessions, be there special, ordinary, referred, young, and so on. I guess the Congress has been a great success, and that it allowed, once again, the circulation of knowledge and ideas. I want to stress about the participation of young researchers at this Congress.
especially through the EPINOS and also the young researcher sessions and also everywhere, I see a lot of new faces in the room, and I saw a lot of them, many more online too, and I think it's a very, very good news, but I don't know much of you. So that's a very good news for regional science to see new people coming there, and it's important for us, and we organize, as you know, a lot of dedicated events like the summer school, like the sessions, and also some dedicated award. But most of all, this Congress has been a great opportunity to bring the regional science community together, and also to allow people to meet, to discuss, and to exchange again. And despite of a few problems and cancellations, mainly due to COVID again, we managed to make it collectively a great success. So I will repeat what has been said by the previous researchers. By my warmly thanks go to the co-chairs of the local organizing committee, Zoltán Gán, Laszlo Szerb, and their team for their careful planning and a very enthusiastic hard work, and most particularly to the secretary of the local organization committee, Balázs Pagar. He made a tremendous work, and he was already there even in the most difficult situations. I also, of course, thank the university and the city of Pécs for their hospitality and their support in hosting the Congress. And, of course, I address my warmest thanks to the ERSA office, Maristela Angozzi, Nurul Barrero, Eric Valdener. They made this organization possible, and also they monitored the online part of the Congress. Let me also congratulate Professor Diego Puga, who has been awarded the ERSA Prize in Regional Science 2022 for its outstanding contribution to regional science research, and also the winners of all the prizes, including the EPINOS Prize and also the Twitter contest and all the other prizes as well. With the Vice President, Evelyn van Leeuwen, the General Secretary, Rosella Nicolini, and the Treasurer, Artur Ochowski, we are looking forward to continue to promote the membership of ERSA and its future activities in regional science. We'll continue to promote and to enhance the links with our beloved members all over Europe and all across Europe, to give them reward and maximum visibility as we can, to foster research excellence and to support promising young researchers. Next year, the Congress will be in the great city of Alicante in Spain, a very attractive place for sure, with a great team and a very interesting topic about sustainability in the cities. The team, I have to say, is amazing and very, very professional. Under the direction of Professor Paloma Taltavul, and with the support of the Spanish Association, with Fernando Morolón, and all the Spanish Association, which is one of the biggest one in Europe. And I am sure that we will have a beautiful and a big Congress in the splendid city of Alicante. I wish Professor Taltavul and the LOC a great success in the preparation of the Congress. We'll do it together, and I hope that you all come to Alicante in order to continue to make the great ERSA community lively. Now, enjoy the last moment in Pécs during the gala dinner, and hopefully see you next year in Alicante.